gentlemen, and tarnished of all ages, how would you like to be the new Stormlord of the Lands Between? Of course, this is a pretty well-known position, one of significant importance, and while we dethrone one relatively false Stormlord in Godric, in a questline with Nephili Lu, we instate a brand new one. But what if we fiddle with the lore a bit, change the way that the game actually happens, and instead decide to become the Stormlord ourselves? Today we're going to take the Stormhawk Axe and push it to its absolute limits, make a full-on build around it, and see exactly how strong we can become. The short answer? It's pretty dang good. It's not going to one-shot any bosses or anything like that, but it is fundamentally incredibly strong. The Ash of War is short range but has good poise and does loads and loads of damage, and once you've buffed up dual power stance Stormhawk Axes, they deal a ton of damage with each and every swing. If you are good at these simple concepts of dodging and finding your moments to get your attacks in, these weapons in this build can absolutely shred not only bosses but also enemies in PvP. The Ash of War all but one-shots in PvP as well. The poise is enough that you can use it to trade with anyone coming in close, and then they get stun locked in the animation until it does about 95% of their health most of the time, and then you just have to lightly finish them off, either with the follow-up input on the Ash itself or just random weapon hits or incantations. It's quite simple and effective at the same time. The Ash itself does about half of its damage in the initial input, but the follow-up inputs for some extra spins do loads of damage as well if you can hit them, but generally speaking, that is quite hard to do against most enemies, especially bosses, so most often you'll have to just settle for the base animation itself. That said, today, this build is just about being an all-rounder, so technically speaking, if you pushed yourself to even higher levels than we've done here, or decided to focus in one aspect of it, you could be even stronger in that one spot. This version is just beautiful for taking out any target that you can set your mind to, combining the strength of the weapon hits of the axes themselves, the damage that the Ash of War can do, and also adding in a fair bit of faith to let us use various lightning incantations that both stay on theme with the build and do quite decent damage within our lightning-based setup as well. On top of this build is stronger now than it ever would have been in the past, as it was buffed twice in recent patches in different ways. Specifically in patch 1.07, the weapon skill was buffed, increasing the motion speed as well as the duration and attack power of the lightning effect on the weapon afterwards, and in patch 1.08, there was an increase to the speed and distance of axe attacks, as well as a reduction to the recovery time. On top of that, Lightning Spear got an increase to its charged attack damage, and Lightning Strike got decreased FP consumption. So what have we got going on here to make all of this quite as strong as it is? Well, first off, of course, are the axes themselves, but then you also need a seal for all of our incantation casting, and of course, the one that we have chosen for this is the Gravelstone seal, as it boosts the damage of the offensive incantations that we are using, as well as any other Dragon Cult incantations by a lovely 15%. And to get this one, go to the West Capital Rampart side of Grace and Lane Dell, turn around and drop off of the balcony to the east until you reach the ground level. Then keep running north until you meet two knights, defeat them, and they will drop the seal for you. After that, I recommend the Imp Head Corpse Helmet, as this gives you +2 faith, and the stat requirements of this build are a bit heavy, so you know, every little bit counts. To get this, you have to do it before the capital turns to ash, and you go from the Avenue balcony side of Grace and Lane Dell, back up the stairs beside you, and then go east until you reach the big double doors at the end of the road. Then take a right down into the alley, and at the end of this alley you'll find a corpse with this helmet on it. As for the rest of your armor, it's totally up to your own fashion choices as long as you can still be medium load for good rolling purposes. As for your talismans, then first up, of course, we have the Shard of Alexander talisman, an absolute classic, especially as the Ash of War on these weapons does quite good damage. The talisman itself boosts the damage of all weapon skills by 15%, and if you somehow don't have it even to this day, the way that you get it is actually relatively simple. You just have to go to 3 different locations. First up, the desert, where you defeat Radon, talk to Alexander there, and then move on to the lava fields just southwest of the Seedwater Terminus site of Grace, and then finally a short run from the Dragon Temple Lift site of Grace and Crumbling Fair and Missoula. You'll find Alexander one last time, and after the interaction with him, he will drop the talisman for you. After that, we have the Flux Canvas talisman. This boosts the damage of all incantations by 8%, and while the axes in our build are the star of the show by far, the incantations are still quite good too, and the ability to swap between them is what makes the build as well rounded as it is, and so this talisman does help quite a bit. To get this one, you have to finish the Millicent questline one way or the other, then head back to Gary's shack in Caelid and kill Gary himself, at which point he will drop it for you to pick up. If you find in a specific encounter you just aren't really using the incantations, however, you can short-term swap this out with the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia talisman, which raises attack power with successive hits, which is perfect as the main offensive power of this build is the power stanced axes. That said, our next talisman is Millicent's Prosthesis, which has the same effect but just a little bit lesser. However, it also comes with a bonus 5 dexterity, which is fantastic as again, this build is very stat hungry, as we aren't just scaling cap for dex, that is actually +5 in the stat, and that's quite strong. To get this one, you have to kill Millicent after the Wind windmill height section of her questline, either just brutally murdering an NPC who's standing around not doing anything, or by choosing to betray her as part of the questline itself. Then finally we have the Lightning Scorpion Charm. This raises all lightning damage by 12% at the cost of some of your damage negation. Obviously this is worth it for our build though, as being hit is bad anyways, and 12% bonus damage to the lightning on our weapons, as well as the lightning of the Ash of War, as well as the lightning of our incantations, is quite the all-purpose buff for us. To get this for yourself, go to the Windham Catacombs dungeon located here, and then open the Imp statue sealed door inside. However, obviously that talisman is much less useful in PvP, in which I instead recommend using the Dragon Crest Great Shield talisman for a big old pile of physical damage negation. Moving on then to our Flask of Wondrous Physick, the options here are quite simple. The Lightning Shrouding Crack tier gives you a 20% boost to all lightning damage, and you get this from defeating the boss at the Minor Air Tree in Northeast Liurnia. Then we also have the Thorny Cracked tier, which increases your attack power with successive hits, and again, power stancing axes, we can easily take advantage of this effect. To get this, simply defeat the boss located at the Minor Air Tree in the Consecrated Snowfields. Then we move on to our incantations, of which 3 are for buffing and the rest are offensive. First up, Dragonbolt Blessing. This one is situational and a body buff, so you won't always use it, but what it does is make one-handed attacks from straight swords, heavy thrusting swords, curved swords, axes, halberds, daggers, regular thrusting swords, fists, claws, spears, and reapers just full-on bounce off of you. This makes these weapons fully incapable of comboing you in the slightest. This has niche situational usage in PvE, but it really shines in PvP, where you can see what weapon your opponent is using before engaging them and decide whether or not this buff is worth applying to yourself. If you use it and counter someone, it will counter them hard, and they will struggle to overcome you just from this buff alone. To get it, simply head to the Stormcaller Church in the Altus Plateau, and you'll find it within a chest. Then we of course have the classic buffs in Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. Golden Vow is a 15% overall damage buff and 10% damage negation buff for 80 seconds after casting, and it can be found in the Corpse Tent Shack on the eastern side of Mount Gelmir. Flame Grant Me Strength gives you a 20% bonus physical and fire damage buff for 30 seconds after casting, and can be found behind Fort Gale in Western Caelid. It's worth noting that Flame Grant Me Strength and Dragonbolt Blessing cannot be used at the same time as each other, so you have to choose which one is more fitting to the encounter that you are taking part in. From here we have 3 offensive incantations. Honed Bolt and Lightning Spear are both purchasable after turning in the Dragon Cult Prayer Book, which is dropped by a knight just south of the Artist's Shack Site of Grace. And then Lightning Strike is found by killing a scarab located at this location in the Weeping Peninsula, just down the cliff from the Minor Air Tree beside it. Other than that, you can use other Dragon Cult incantations if you choose, but these are the ones that fit the theme of the build properly, so this is what I've gone with here. They're also quite strong for their own reasons. For the most part, the incantations are way more useful in PvP than PvE, as in PvE the axes are just so strong, it's just really hard to justify switching off of them to launch a spell, especially if you aren't at 80 faith. But in PvP, the extra variety can make you an absolute menace to deal with for your opponents. As far as attributes go then, you'll see quite quickly that this build would become even stronger at even higher levels. First up, as usual, I recommend going for 60 Vigor, as this is just a lovely, comfortable spot for playing the game in general. Then you want 50 Strength and 50 Dexterity, as the weapon scales with both stats. The weapon hits themselves scale a little bit better with Strength, but the skill on the weapon scales exclusively with Dex, so balance this how you wish. Then we dump most of our remaining points into Faith. 28 is the absolute minimum requirement to use all of our incantations, but any more points into that is just more damage for our offensive incantations, so it's a good thing to have. I recommend having about 20 Mind as well to make casting comfortable, and then just enough Endurance so that you don't have to stop swinging your axes mid-combo. All in all, this build has a lot of options going for it, a lot of damage from a lot of places, and it has the ability to topple any foe in the game, including PvP. It isn't quite effortless, but the reward that you get on the effort that you put in is extremely good. It gives you a really good return, and it feels great to use this once you get used to the playstyle too, not to mention looking absolutely badass while you do it. There you have it everyone, how to become the Stormlord yourself. And of course, if you wanted to go even higher level, you could make it even stronger. This is just a template after all. I hope you've enjoyed this build. Let us know if there are any other weapons or skills or spells that you want to see builds made out of, and we'll have a go at it as well. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.